Maybe.
So that'd be the only school I could think of that would be anywhere close to it.
I see it's moved from where it was before. It's more of a report now instead of
Yeah.
okay.
I'm Mary Beth Fisher.
And your name is?
Craig Counts. I've been on the board the last 2 years. I've been the principal in town for 25 years before that.
Right, okay, all right.
This is kind of home back in the buildings now. I retired 3 years ago.
Oh, goodness, good for you. Yes. Bridesmaids and everything. We had a really good time.
Hi.
Like I'm too old for that stuff.
Good. How are you? Busy.
I know, I'm doing a lot of running. It's a lot of running. Like 4 case cams in a day.
That clock's behind.
Everything I had on.
Oh, did you?
Do
they have a new show on Zoom?
What's that?
Do you know if they have a new show on Zoom?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, your run is.
Okay, that's what I was. We don't, we got things.
How are you? I like your new glasses.
Tammy.
Nope, she's in.
You don't like them?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't care. But yeah, you can have something stylish. Because there's people who should have something. I'm not scared.
Pardon me, everyone. Can you hear me?
I'd be willing to bet if you hit your gavel, they'll quit.
Yeah, probably so. I want to get Craig up here. All right. I call to order this meeting of USD489 Board of Education for June 21st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. I believe that clock is about 2 minutes slow, so sorry, Craig. Didn't mean that. I think they go.
Come on, hurry up.
Very good. Okay, so what we'll do first is approve the agenda for the meeting. Our agenda is posted on board docs, a link for which is on the USD49 website. I move to accept the agenda as written. Do I
Second.
have a second? Thank you, Lance. Any discussion about the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll go for a vote. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Or 6-0. Okay. Does she vote yes on this? Okay. Okay, well. Motion passes 6-0 or 5-0. We'll make sure we have it right. Okay. So please vote electronically the same way using the system here. That's right, I forgot to mention that we have one board member on Zoom and another board member is unable to make the meeting. Next item, we have something new on the agenda. I want to read the mission of the district, of USD49, to get our minds around what we're supposed to be doing. The mission of USD49 is to provide a quality learning experience for every student in every classroom every day. To support the mission of the district, the USD49 Board of Education includes supporting a vision that encompasses high student achievement, highly effective staff, effective and positive communications, effective management of resources. Alrighty, move on to the next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Consent agenda is also published in board docs. We have quite a number of items on the consent agenda today. 10 as a matter of fact. Board meeting minutes from May 17th, the 21-22 board meeting calendar, 21-22 nutrition services procurement plan, approval of a transfer of funds to pay for the gas bill, approval of the authority for year-end budget transfers, Hayes High School site council minutes from May 5th, Hayes Recreation Commission meetings from minutes from April 28th and the May 26th agenda. Early Childhood Center Policy Committee minutes from April 26th, the Director's Report, and a policy update regarding training. We also have personnel transactions and financial reports.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Very good, thank you. We have a motion to approve. We have a,
Mr. President, do we have that same, on 5-1, the February gas bill? Is that duplicate or?
no, that is, he's going to explain the gas bill to us, I think. Well, wait.
Well, that'll be 5-1,
Yeah.
But is it also in the consent agenda?
Oh, wait, maybe it was moved and I didn't catch that.
but yeah, it's 5-1.
Oh, my mistake. I think I read a draft. So we're not approving any gas bill during the consent agenda. We will be approving it later on. Thanks, Alan. I'm glad you caught that.
It's
Okay.
on the consent agenda.
Yeah,
I
5.2.
just read it.
I didn't even see one.
So do we need to,
Well, I can
He just
explain. I
said
think
took it out.
basically the consent
No,
agenda,
He just mentioned it, yeah, what's on your agenda, what's the consent agenda.
right.
Even though he hadn't.
I mistakenly mentioned it because I think it was there before. So we have 9 items today.
Who's second?
Craig?
Let's see, Lance. Oh, yes, great. So we all square on what we're doing? Passed in the, if we approve the consent agenda as a 9 items? Okay.
Right.
Okay, any more discussion? I have one item. I want to recognize Sandra Bright, who has been with the district for 29 years, most recently working as a bus monitor for the Early Childhood Center. Sandra, thank you very much for your service, and we wish you the best. The district also has 18 new appointments and 1 transfer. Welcome aboard, everyone, or in most cases, thank you for taking on supplemental duties. All righty. All in favor of the consent agenda approval, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, motion passes 6-0. Does she vote? Okay, 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just need to tell Jess, my computer's not cooperating, so can you just do that for me until I get it working? Thank you.
Very good. Item 3, this is a public comment. This is your opportunity to speak to the Board of Education. Do we have anybody in the room that would like to speak to the board tonight?
Perfect timing.
Yeah, good.
Could you guys speak up a little louder? We can barely hear you back
Oh,
here.
really? Okay.
Thank you.
Test, 1, 2. That better? Okay, I'll just talk louder. Sorry. Okay, so we don't have anybody that wants to comment tonight. All right. Well, moving on to reports next. We have 3 reports. We have one from Superintendent Wilson, one from Assistant Superintendent Hip, and we're also going to have an update about the emergency hazard mitigation plan for the county. So, Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you for your Superintendent Communications.
Okay, just some things I want to run through with you guys. We've talked earlier about the ESSER allocations, the funds that were federal funds due to COVID. We just received confirmation this week that from KSDE that our ESSER funds have been allocated. I just wanted to share that with the board and what we're doing with those funds. Of course, included in that list is summer school. And this is money for 2 years for teachers at elementary, middle, and high, as well as some paras for summer school. We're also providing student transportation during summer school. We're also providing some supplies for summer school. So a big chunk of our ESSER funds have went towards summer school, and we'll continue, and definitely next year we'll do that as well, because this was just to address the learning loss that incurred during COVID. Some other things that we're doing with our ESSER funds that I think are really great, and great for our kids and great for our district. We'll be able to continue with supporting our early childhood with the, our kindergarten teachers, adding some kindergarten staff. We added staff last year. We'll continue to support that. We are reducing it to just 2, where we were at 4, but we'll reduce it to 2. And we're also going to add in a high school student support teacher. And this will really help with maybe some kids at the high school level who are failing, and they get some credit retrieval with a class, and that will help. So we're using some of our funds for that. We're also, for our MTSS coach, a big part of our district improvement goals for improvement is to move to our MTSS, which we're implementing starting next year. We'll actually have a coach that will work with all buildings in data and information that is important to school improvement. And some, we're also going to continue with add that nurse position back in for at least 2 more years or 1 more year, looking at 2. Our community outreach specialist that we been waiting on, which will help us, the district, with some grant writing, communications with the community, and that will be part of what we'll use ESSER funds for. Of course, we're adding in some classroom books to increase our libraries. Also, just our subscriptions that are normal subscriptions that we use every year, we're going to take advantage of some of the ESSER funds to help us pay for that. EduCliner, Zello, Lexia, FastBridge. Of course, our learning management systems, Canvas and Seesaw, that we use at the elementary, middle, and high. We're looking at possibly, and this is something still in the works, some behavior, social, emotional learning support, maybe for our elementary schools, as we deal with some behaviors and things, and more support for our schools and our classroom teachers. We're going to look at adding classroom aides, as well as some professional development. And then, the big part of this is also we're able to do some capital improvements. And so we're looking at some windows in 2 of our elementary buildings at Wilson and Laughlin. And that's still waiting on bids for all the specs to get done, completed by the architect, so we can get that out for bid. But we do have those funds available to us that will help us take care of those things. So I think it's just, I just wanted to share that with the board, that plans are fully in place. Pieces of them are already rolling. Some of them are in process, and some will be taking place from here on out. So I don't know if there's any questions on any of that.
That staff member that you were talking about for credit accrual?
Yes, we have already, that's already been hired.
Is that under Learning Center, or is that just under the high school?
No, it'll be under the high school. And it's more credit retrieval. We're using the Edgenuity program.
Okay.
So if a student maybe has failed an English 9 class, they will be able to take that class for credit retrieval while they're taking English 10 or something like that. So we can just helping kids catch up. So it'll be really nice to have that available in the actual high school. So hopefully these kids don't get too far behind, because occasionally kids do fail classes, and we got to catch them up. So
we've even talked about not waiting until the end of the semester. Like we can customize even moving courses so that if they missed a 9th week or they were out for something, so that they can use GPS or some of their other classes to get caught up and fill in the gap, rather than waiting the whole semester or a year.
So that's another new position.
Yep.
And so in 2 years, when we don't, I mean, we just have to deal with that when it comes to, we don't have a budget for it.
Yeah.
We just have to.
I mean, that's the thing with ESSER funds. We have added some positions, like these kindergarten teachers right now, we're paying for them with ESSER. We'll just have to make some decisions in 2 years where we are at and where we see the district, currently standing, and what we want we think we can handle. So, but it's just, I mean, these ESSER funds are great. They really are. We will never see anything like this in our history again, probably in terms of how we have been supported, with federal funds for for learning and improvements. It's really phenomenal. And we're going to really try to make the best of it. And so I just wanted to share those are some of the things that we have utilized. And that's a pretty large bill in terms of dollars that we have added up there with staff and curriculum and even some capital improvements and looking at windows. So.
And I think it's important to bring these up. I'm glad you did, because we would like to know about these, but also the public needs to realize that we're not just putting our head in the sand and hoping COVID goes away or something. We're moving forward with
and we're addressing those
issues that
it's going to take us a while to regroup from all of this. And even though we were very fortunate, we were a district that was in session. Other than last spring, we were in session most every day. We still didn't quite. We had some learning loss, and we've got to do some things to help kids catch up. So these things are really going to help.
I know there was a lot of discussion before with you guys trying to figure out what you were going to use those ESSER funds to. So thank you for you and your team taking the time to figure out the best way to allocate that. Because like you said, I mean, we're probably not going to see it again, but it's a phenomenal windfall here of money that we were able to put towards stuff. So that's awesome.
A lot of meetings, and we didn't, some districts jumped on it right away and said, okay, we're doing this. We really took our time and really had lots of conversations, with lots of people, and got their input, and I feel like we really came up with a pretty good plan.
I think so.
When July hits and we're talking about the summer school projects, could you fill us in on how many elementary kids, how many middle school kids, how many high school kids have taken advantage of the summer school? You may not have it yet, but by July we should have a good idea to let people know how many kids are being affected by summer school.
Definitely can do that.
Good. Pretty good.
Also wanted to update you a little bit on some of our projects. The big project, of course, this summer is our Roosevelt HVAC project. It is going gangbusters. Lots of things been done. Boiler chiller has been moved out of the room. It's like a big hole. It looks pretty empty in there. They are going to put something back in, but it looks pretty empty right now. They've got rooftop units that have just arrived. They'll be setting those really soon. So that's exciting. They've built the ductwork, and they'll be working to get that, hung and put in place here in the next month or so. One glitch, and it's really no one's fault. It's just what has happened is you won't believe this, but electrical panels to run all this new heating and air, they're hard to come by, and it's just due to they're behind on production. And really, Rusty and I met with Glassman and RDH last week, and he is real fearful that he's not going to get his electrical panels by July 1. So, and that's no fault of theirs. It's just that's the way it is. A lot of materials are delayed. And so we've come up with a plan B. I think it's a really good plan. So basically, in a nutshell, we're going to have a transformer, the old transformer that's currently running all the power and HVAC in the building. They're going to be putting in the new transformer that was designed for this project, but the old transformer is just going to run the building, and the new transformer is going to end up running the new HVAC. Temporarily, because they don't have the new panel, and don't ask me to describe how that actually works or why it works, but they explained it to me and I wrote it down. I said I would share with the board, and really it's no one's fault. Glassman Corporation and RDH were awesome to work with. They felt really bad about this because it just looks like it's not going to be a finished product. Most likely what will end up happening is we'll have to use that's current setup. And that transformer will set right outside of the building. We'll fence it. No one will have access to it. But it will be a kind of a temporary fix until they can get really 2 to 3 week window, which we're not really going to have a 2 to 3 week window during the next school year. So it's probably next summer when we're looking at probably finishing this project. But no one's really going to know. Everything will be working. It's not going to be finished until probably next summer. And they regretfully wanted everyone to be aware that it's just due to electric panels not being available this summer. So wanted to update, and just also to make you aware that our other summer projects are going to be delayed. We've got, carpet is probably a little further out than, we've got some carpeting projects. We've got, just small projects that are going to be delayed due to materials being really tough to get right now. So it's just part of the game, and we'll be able to catch up at some point. I wanted to also share with the board our district plan for a safe schools return. We're in the process right now of putting together our plan. I know there's been questions maybe for board members. I know I've received several questions. Well, what about masks? Are we wearing masks? At the start. The plan is not to wear a mask at the start of school. There will not be any mask, but we still have to have plans in place. Because I think it's important that everyone understands COVID has not gone away. We're doing really well now. Our numbers are good, but COVID is still out there, and we still have to have a plan so that when we get a bunch of people back in a building and maybe not wearing masks, maybe not being as cautious as we were this year, there could possibly be some outbreaks. And that's why we have to have a plan in place, and we'll have something, that just explains that as these things happen, let's say next year, and we did really good in terms of students. We didn't have a lot of students get COVID. We did have a few, but if we did have some students and they are not vaccinated, or if someone got COVID and you were not vaccinated, there is a possibility we'll still have to do some quarantining next year. And so, once again, we've talked a lot. We talked with Dr. Harris just last week about the possibility of getting information out to parents about vaccinations for 12 to 18-year-olds and those being available, and how it will help their kid if there is COVID in the building. But we will not, we'll just get that information out. So that'll be part of our plan. I did want to just share real quickly the hailstorm that occurred a couple weeks ago. We did receive some damage in the district. For the most part, we didn't really receive anything drastically. We had about 39 of our vehicles received fairly significant hail damage. Of course, we've got just tons of vehicles sitting outside. They'll be repaired over the course of a month, maybe. I don't know. We still haven't heard exactly how we'll get those repaired or how that'll actually happen, but we'll be taking care of those. Our roofs, for the most part, did really well, except ECC, which is a shingle roof. That probably is going to get totaled out. Our metal roof on what we call the E building, which is our CTE vocational building. The metal took a pretty good hit. I think we're determining what our insurance.
Yeah, we're working with the P&C insurance right now. It comes down to whether there's what do you call it, cosmetic rider, because it definitely beat up the roof. What they're not sure is they got to go back and measure along the seams to see if there'll be potential failure of the roof. Or if they have the cosmetic rider on there, which I don't know, we've asked them to start checking that out. If there's cosmetic rider, it'll get replaced, guaranteed. If it doesn't, and it's just whether it failed, they gotta go back and do some more measuring. But it definitely got dinged up. We're just not sure if it means it's gonna leak and we're gonna replace it, or we'll get it replaced because of the cosmetic damage.
Okay. Of course, a lot of our little storage sheds, that are shingle asphalt shingles on top of them, they all are pretty much going to get replaced. So of course that's just part of the ball game. So yeah, for the most part we fared really well. Nothing major. We did have some broken windows in 7 of our cars, or cracked windshields. So those I believe have already been replaced. So I think we're good there. So I did want to, I won't normally do this, but at the end of each school year, I meet with administrators and directors, and I always ask them the same 4 questions. What went well, what you wish would have went better, and what are the challenges maybe facing you next year, and what do you need from us? And the only reason I want to share this, I thought it was very reflective, is I've really found some themes in visiting with our administrators and directors, and some of it includes you as board members. And I think what went well, a theme that I felt that was prevalent in all our administrators and directors, everyone indicated how cool it was, how neat it was that everyone pulled together. And when I'm talking about staff, I'm talking about parents, I'm talking about even students, to the point of everyone pulling together, for a cause of, hey, this is not going to be fun, this is what we got to do, and everyone seemed to, for the most part, just did their part. And that was kind of a theme that almost everyone said the exact same thing. When I asked them, what do they wish went better, and I think this was also a theme, maybe I didn't hear this from everyone, but I heard for a lot, and I thought it was worth mentioning that, because one of the things that was really tough this year was when we had new staff to our district. It was a tough year to be a new staff member, because all of a sudden everyone is masked up. You really were asking people not to have a lot of contact, stay away from each other, for the most part, stay in kind of your area with your own people. And so they always felt like, we didn't probably do as good a job with our new staff, in terms of getting them to understand what exactly it is to be a teacher or a staff member in Hayes. And I thought, that was really a pretty good insight from our administrators and directors, and it's just important that we understand that, and we try to help people their second year. The challenges, I think what I heard was, and just what we talked about, like with summer school, we're going to deal with learning loss for a while. This isn't just going to we haven't fixed it. We're going to have to work hard to get some kids caught up to where they need to be. We still need to support the social emotional. This whole COVID experience was pretty traumatic for a lot of people in different ways. So we have to continue to look at that, and just how we can reintegrate into a normal school year right away is going to be fairly important. And then I think this is important. This is why I wanted to share this with you guys. What do you need from us to be supported? And I think the thing that I wanted to share with you guys is many of the people I talked to just really thank the board for the decisions that you made, the feedback that you took from everyone and made decisions about allowing everyone to stay in school. I think you should be commended for that, even though there was times where we didn't know exactly what was the right thing to do, but a lot of things. So I think those are just some themes that I thought were worth sharing with the board.
Okay.
And then just the last thing, July 26th, we have tentatively planned the board retreat. Now I think Lance might have a conflict on the 26th, and Nushelle might still have a conflict too. In talking with Gary, it's going to be pretty tough to find a date, I think, that's going to work. I bet if we're okay, we'll still roll with the 26th. He is planning to come in in the morning. We'll meet here. It'll be a board retreat. There won't be any action or anything like this. It's just our chance as a board to work together to talk about our mission, vision, core values, as well as just some planning and just some things that we want to do. So if that still works for everyone, we'll have that on the schedule, and we'll plan that for the 26th. Okay?
Yep.
That's all I have.
Good.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, very good. Thanks, Ron. Yes, I think with the COVID issue, it'd be very irresponsible of us not to plan ahead for various contingencies, so I appreciate that you're doing that. Yeah. All right, Chris, do you have a financial update for us?
Yeah, a few topics.
Gas bill?
Like Art pointed out, it is a little bit redundant because I had listed that we were going to talk about the cemetery gas bill. I'll give you a couple of the details and kind of the way this was playing out. Planning on giving you an update. Really, we have, based on your action back in March, April, we joined with the KSB group, and at that point then we paid the statutory maximum for a natural disaster at the time. We paid that to cemetery kind of under protest, under the direction of KSB. That leaves us with a little over $65,000 in outstanding. Our gas bill thankfully, for April was back down to normal, so everything is square now, but we do have that 65 sitting out there. And after consulting with KSB a little bit more and KSDE also, that's where that next agenda item 6.1 or wherever that comes up here, where that's going to come in, or 5.1, I guess, where that comes in. Because basically what we need to do is, typically we would pay all those gas bills out of our general fund. We don't want to do that because it's under protest, and we expect the bill to be somewhere south of the 65 that they say we still owe, but we know it'll be more than zero. So we need to encumber a place to spend that money out of when it all gets settled. We can't do that out of general fund, because if we do that and then say it's half, well, now that money that we had encumbered in general fund, we don't keep that. That would go back to Topeka, because then we underspend our general fund. So what we'll ask for in the 5.1 is for the authority of the board, because it takes board authority to spend any of our money that's in contingency reserve. We'll encumber the money out of contingency reserve, and then, if it is half or a third or whatever it is, the remaining balance from the encumbrance, we just liquidate that, and it goes back into the cash carryover in contingency reserve, which is perfectly fine. So the general update at this point is there's about 65,000 outstanding, and in a little bit we'll ask you to encumber that out of our contingency reserve fund. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is at-risk eligibility and at-risk funding for next school year. So typically, well, let me start with the best news, and you already know this, but the best news of the day is school lunches are free for all students again next year. Okay, so that's the good thing. That does have, it impacts our processes at the district level, because typically that application that a family would fill out to get either free or reduced meals, typically that application then ties to two different things that are very important. One would be free or reduced enrollment fees, right? And the other is tied directly to our state aid and what's called the at-risk weighting, okay? So even though a student, they're not tied one for one. So just because you may qualify for a free or reduced meal doesn't mean that you receive at-risk services, but that's how the weighting is calculated. The weighting that's been tied to free or reduced lunches, that's how they set how much we're going to get in state aid, and then we take that money and go spend it on kids that are in need of at-risk services. Well, so the two things that get dissociated now with free and reduced lunches would be who qualifies for free or reduced fees at enrollment time, and also what state aid do we get as far as our at-risk weighting. And so we've been working with our vendor, so typically the process is about July 1, just anytime in the next few days, about July 1, a letter goes out to all the families, and it says, hey, you think you might be free or reduced for school lunches, fill out this form, and then that's how we calculate all those other things. This year, since lunches are free, we've been working with the vendor that we use for the electronic form and the kind of the point of sale, all of those food service things.
Right.
And in order to keep the processes as similar as possible, they're going to take out all of those free meal requirements and leave really the two things that have to be in there, which would be total family household income and the number of people in the household. Right, so those will still be on a form that looks very similar, feels very similar to what our normal process is, and we'll send that out to every family, and that's how we'll use that then to calculate who's eligible for free or reduced enrollment fees, and then also we'll be able to use that to turn into KSDP. So we wanted to get word out. Everybody is going to get this survey. Not typically, maybe not every family would get the survey. Everybody's going to get the survey this year. We're going to send it out. It'll be on the website. We'll email it out. It'll go out through the Thrill Share also, and it'll be a link. And basically, our request is, if you have any inkling that you might qualify for free or reduced fees at enrollment time, please fill this out. If you think it's even close, it doesn't hurt anything if you fill it out and you're not eligible. No big deal. But it does. Even if a family for whatever reason, didn't want to qualify for reduced fees at enrollment time, if they don't fill out the form, then we do lose state aid, if they would have been eligible. So we'll send it out, we'll ask everybody, if you're anywhere close, take a few seconds, fill it out online, and then we'll be able to use that information to ensure that we maximize our state aid, can operate schools the way we want to, and also catch anybody who might qualify for those free or reduced meal fees. I'm sorry, not meal fees, those are free, enrollment fees.
Do we have reduced fees in enrollment? Isn't it just free? Or
This will be the first year. If you remember a couple of months ago, you passed, when we were talking school fees, we added in reduced enrollment fees.
Okay.
So yeah, we didn't in the past, but we do this year, or we will for the upcoming school year.
So yeah, that would be a big, if we don't get those numbers in, our funds will go down.
Yes.
And I think, as probably you are, you're afraid they're not going to put it in if they don't put it in.
Absolutely, and we saw that a little bit this year already. And we certainly saw it across the state. Our families were really good, and for the most part, we didn't lose a lot of state aid that we would have been eligible for. But across the state, it wasn't that way. And if families just said, oh, I'm going to get meals free anyway, I'm not going to mess with it, it could have a significant impact on our ability to operate and provide the services that we want to be able to provide. So it's very important that folks fill out that survey.
Doesn't every district deal with the same issue, though? I mean, I'm surprised that there hasn't been a more uniform plan put in place for us.
Yeah. There's been a lot of discussion at the state level about this,
Well,
and
the survey came from the state.
yeah.
Yes, there is a paper survey. What KSD came out with, because there are some rules now, because now it's not tied to the federal food program.
Right.
There are certain things that we can't do, and so they did give us a template of paper form to distribute, asking those things. And then we've taken that and been working with our electronic vendor so that we're not sorting through 2,000 pieces of paper. We've worked with our vendor who does our food service software to turn that into an electronic form so that we can actually manage it.
Chris, just a thought, I know you said you're going to send it out here pretty quick and go through it. I know a lot of people in the summertime, things get passed on. Will there be a push right towards enrollment?
Yeah.
Where we're trying to get parents to fill this in?
Absolutely. So at enrollment time, we'll have stations set up, and if you haven't had a chance to fill out the survey and you think you might be eligible, we'll help people fill it out at that time too. So it doesn't go away after July 1. We send it out, but it will continue to remind folks. Okay.
And this will be at every school, is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, it works for every school. Since we do the centralized enrollment, we'll send it out when we send out enrollment packets also, we'll send out the link, and then at the high school where we do the centralized enrollment, we'll have stations set up there.
Good. Excellent.
I just think here, what was next on the list?
Revenue neutral.
Revenue neutral. Okay, so new legislation this year, basically it says if you are going to levy, if your bill rate is going to be higher than it was, if it's going to be higher than revenue neutral from last year, then there have been some new processes added in, and this encompasses schools now. So every taxing entity has to do what's called revenue neutral rate. This is a little bit odd for schools, especially for us, say in Ellis County. The last few years, we've seen our county evaluation go up. Well, there's legislation or statute that says counties levy 20 mills, and that goes to Topeka and then gets redistributed back out as education state aid, right? Well, so the 20 mills is legislated, and now we have to notify and do public hearing if we're going to be above revenue neutral. Well, because the county valuation went up again this year, we're automatically above revenue neutral because 20 mills now generates more dollars than it did before. So, I mean, we're almost statutorily every year, as long as our county evaluation is going up, we're statutorily going to have to follow this new process, which basically means by July 20th, the board will have to pass a resolution and send it to the treasurer to notify them that we're going to be going above the revenue neutral rate. And then the new timeline pushes back our budget adoption. So by September 20th now, we will have a hearing. So the same day that we do budget hearing, whatever day we do that, and it'll be probably early, or our September board meeting now, or maybe the August one. When we're doing our budget hearing, we'll also have another hearing that night, which would be our revenue neutral rate hearing, to say, yes, we're going above the revenue neutral rate, and then we would, next hearing will be adopting the budget, and then getting that certified by September 20th now. So it pushes the timeline back a little bit, and it actually pushed forward the timeline. From the treasurer, we had to get notice of our county evaluation and what our revenue neutral rate was by June 15th. We got that. Now we know based on county evaluation, we'll be above revenue neutral. So at the next meeting, we'll be bringing to you resolution to move to the next step, which says we're still above revenue neutral. More details and the actual numbers behind it to come in the next meeting.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is that, and Chris did a good job explaining it, but this is going to be pretty common, because of this new piece of legislation, it's going to be pretty common that we're going to be above our revenue neutral rate every year. And it's going to be 95% of the districts in the state are going to be, because valuation tends to always go up. There's probably 5% of the school districts where valuation might go down, but if any of your valuation goes up, you're going to be above the neutral rate. So, and of course, that just so people understand when they start hearing that we're not really raising anything. It doesn't really, like Chris said, it's not really designed well for schools. But it's just the way it is.
This was put in by the legislature.
Yes.
Yeah. New legislation this year. So what they do with that information is then each household in the county will now get an individual letter. So I think it didn't start till next year. So this year they collect the information, but then by next year, then each household will get a new letter itemizing out exactly what the revenue neutral rate was and what the rate would actually be.
And it'll say your district has exceeded and it's going to sound probably really bad, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it means our values of our property is going up, unless you're buying.
Economy's starting to go back up.
Yeah.
Chris, how's the budget process going?
So we should have new budget software probably in the next week. Right now, we're in the process of doing final closing out for the year. Everything is on pace, and we're sitting in pretty good shape. I'll be able to bring to you exactly what our cash balances and transfers were by the July meeting, but we're working through that process right now and doing all the preparatory work, and we should have PSD budget software end of next week.
When do you send that in? And Dale Dennis doesn't review it. Is Craig, or who does that now?
Yeah, Craig and Burl is still back around, and then, but I think Dale will actually be around.
Oh, well, is he still around?
He's been off, he's retired, and now he's doing some consulting stuff. Craig, Dale, and Burl will all be doing budget reviews. We'll get something scheduled, mid-July, probably to get there, but with this new revenue neutral rate, since we do have to go through that process, the timeline for actual certification of the budget moves back to September 20th now instead of.
Since we're doing pretty well with our funds and everything, are we going to meet that expectation to get all salaries out of capital outlay?
Yes, actually, we were able to do that last year, so we don't have any salary coming out of capital outlay this year.
Okay. And do we have any W-9s? Or are they all, 1099 employees?
W-2s versus 1099?
Yes, sir.
So there's all of our employees, right? Anybody that is a W-2 employee.
Right.
We do have some independent contractors that we would use here and there that are 1099, so we would tend to send them a different tax thing. But that's typically for vendors, not employees.
Right.
Yeah. So
we do have some
a
of those.
handful of 1099 contractors that we use periodically with different vendors. Yeah.
And those mostly out of maintenance?
Some, we're actually in the process of using a couple of folks in our tech department now too. A couple of folks that actually had been employees, they're moving on. We know they're moving on to new positions. And so I put in designation with us, but through the summer, before they start the next job, we're hiring them to do a couple of projects here and there. So a lot of times it does end up being maintenance, but we've got it happening in some other spots too.
Thank you.
You done?
Final piece is just, wanted to give some recognition to Amy Beckman, Renee Booth, Dave Blockman. We are in the final stages of our design and implementation of our new, what we would call our ERP software, which is all the finance and the personnel and HR and all of that. So Skyward, we are in the 11th hour finishing up all of the different customizations and design and implementation of that so that we go officially live July 1. And that will mean lots and lots of changes to how the district operates. And I think create some efficiency that is much needed, at this point to kind of catch up with the world in some different areas. But it has been a ton of work, and those three ladies have put in a ton of work and a ton of time and a ton of mental energy too in designing things so that when we're long gone, hopefully those processes still make sense and still carry forward. So, good. But thank them and let you know that things are on pace, but it's a process, and we'll learn more after July 1 too. We'll figure out things that we started 4 or 5 months ago, and maybe now we decide, we got to tweak that a little bit. So it's not a static kind of a thing, but a lot of work has gone into it. I appreciate everything that they've done. Other folks have helped out too. I know Anita Phillips has helped in doing some different setup things. So just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update of where we're at and everything too.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Any more questions?
Do we need a motion on that? Encumbering the...
Oh, I think that's going to be done.
Yeah, there's actually an action item a little bit later. Yeah.
Okay.
So, before we realized that was going to have to be an action,
Yeah, sure. You were going to...
I had it in there as an update, so I kind of shared the info now, and then you can vote on it a little bit.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, so yes, I need to, so next, we're moving into action and discussion items. And we have 6 tonight. You can see them on the screen. The first is the updated emergency hazard mitigation plan for the region. And from what I understand, we need to approve the resolution, which basically tells us to examine, it's a little confusing. That's a resolution so that we, as a board, recognize this emergency mitigation plan. But Ron, do you have any more information on that?
Yeah, this is just something that has to happen every 5 years. Lyle Pantel from the Ellis County Emergency Management Office. This is just something he is asking us to do. He has to get your approval, as several approvals from other school districts as well as some other organizations, as whatever piece is in the plan. The document is over 400 pages. Our part is really pretty minimal, but you're just basically, in a sense, approving that what's in this plan, and in a nutshell, it's just that at some point we'll make attempts to have safe rooms in every school district or school district building, if that's possible within our future plans, as well as they're really wanting us, or would like to see us purchase flood insurance, of course. But I asked him, is this something that is expected that we have to do immediately? And he said, no, it's just something to always, it's in the plan for you to consider for going forward. So this is just kind of a little hoop and loop you have to jump through. So if you could approve this, this resolution that's included in your packet, then I'll get it back to him that we've taken action on it.
Okay. We can obviously agree to researching the flood insurance idea.
Yes.
I mean, that's something we probably
We'll
do
always
all the
look
time
at
anyway. Designing and constructing safe rooms. I just want to make sure we don't lock us, if we need them, we should do them, but if we
Yes.
can't do them right away, we should, you know.
And I asked him that, and he said there's no, like, we're gonna get in trouble if we don't. It's just something that's in the plan, and we'll always continue to look at that, of how we
I thought
can
so when I read, but
possibly do that in the future.
And he may even be a resource of grants or whatever
Sure.
to get us safe rooms. I know when we built the one at the middle school with FEMA, Ellis County was very supportive of that.
Sure, yeah, and I think he would definitely be a resource that we could utilize if we're going forward.
okay, very good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask if we have a motion to recognize the updated Kansas Homeland Security Region B Hazard Mitigation Plan.
So moved.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this? All right, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Is Michelle on the screen? Did she give a thumbs up or something? Okay.
Yeah, she's good.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way. All right. Now, next item is the to encumber funds from the contingency reserve fund for February gas bill. That's,
Mr. President, I move we approve the moving of the funds contingency reserve to pay for that gas bill.
very good. All right. Do I have a second of that motion?
Second.
Well, I'll second it. Okay, any discussion about this motion?
And we are hoping through the lawsuit, it will be much less than the 65,000, and that will help many school districts across the state, not just Hayes.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it could be reduced less than half of that, I think. Hopefully, that's our hopeful.
Okay. I'm going to call for a vote. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way. There we go. All right. Now, this issue we've talked about before, the elementary social studies textbook renewal. Do you want to say anything about this before we get moving?
Just, I might say, we talked about, the last time I didn't have the 3-year quote, so I want to bring that back because there are savings if you go, multi-year. We feel like the 3-year aligns better with some of the other things that we have going on with the new assessment. So that's what I have in front of you for the elementary, and anything at the middle up from high school will be something we can take care of under the 20,000 or the supplemental. So that's what you would be voting on tonight.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and call for a motion just to get things rolling here. I move to accept I move to approve the renewal of the current elementary social studies materials, which are K-5 materials from My World Social Studies textbooks for $40,825.13.
Second.
Do I have a second of that? Convoluted motion I made. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any more discussion?
And those are all 3-year agreements, correct?
And those are going to last for 5 years?
It'll be a 3-year.
Okay, 3 years. And you told me, and you said that, I'm sorry. Okay.
Is this price any different than we do in the past? The first, did we do this 3 years last time?
No, the last time we did, probably 6 or 7 when we did the.
Oh,
fund one.
okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's when we had the funds and we had a set amount, so we really tried to knock everything out. And now we just.
Renew, yeah.
We're looking at things, yes.
Sounds good. Okay, I'm going to call for a motion, call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Please vote electronically the same way. I'm assuming Michelle voted on this. Okay. Very good. Next, student handbooks. We're going to consider the approval of the student handbooks for 2021, 2022 for the elementary schools and the middle school.
Yeah, I've included in your packet just the highlighted changes and additions for the middle school as well as the elementary school. Mr. Albers is not here this evening, but I do have some of the elementary principals here. Of course, if there's questions or anything that you'd like to discuss, we can do that. Of course, I don't necessarily need approval this evening, but if we could get this taken care of, it'd be probably nice to just get it done. And we're not in those days where we had to print handbooks, and so sometimes that used to be a little bit of pressure to get approvals. This can wait, definitely can wait if you want to, but or if you want to ask some questions, anything on there. Not necessarily you need to ask questions, but there's really no big changes. The only thing that you would see on the middle school side is that they're implementing kind of just a schedule or just a credit that's going to be required for middle school students for promotion, and in terms of if you don't meet it, you're going to have to go to summer school. And Mr. Albers just indicated that it's going to help kids kind of keep a little more on track in terms of we had a lot of kids that want to just shut down and not finish out the year. And so if we have something like this will help kids and just let them know that if they don't get those credits, just like it's going to happen at the high school, they'll have to go to summer school.
I think that's a good incentive.
I think it's a good
If you want your summer.
Yeah, yeah.
So he feels like that'll help. It's just it's a talking point, and that it'll be actually in print.
I just noticed one thing on the middle school, and I was going to ask, it marked off about using a driver's license
That's what I was
if you
just
come
gonna
in for visitors. Do we not use the visitor security
Software?
software?
I don't even really have a good answer. I don't even know. Do we use it at the elementary?
Scott is here.
Do we use it?
We really haven't the last year, just with visitor restrictions, but we still buy the supplies and licensing for it, so.
We did up till
Yeah.
COVID.
Okay, yeah.
So if we open the buildings again,
Yeah. Our plan was to go back to using it.
so you might check with Tom
Yeah, I don't
on
know
that
why.
one.
I'll ask him why that
Okay.
is marked on.
Yeah. Well, okay. The normal routine is for us to
And we can
have our
definitely
first
wait.
read
It's
and then
not a
come back
big
later
issue.
for the vote. And I was going to go ahead and push forward to have a vote tonight to get this over with, but it looks like
Yeah,
we might
if
want to
can
look
come
into
back,
that. So.
we'll clarify some of
Okay,
that
so why don't we,
question.
this is our first reading, and then come back next time and we'll
Yeah.
vote on that. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Next is the classified handbook.
I'm gonna let Chris handle that. He's been working on the classified handbook.
I want to run through just a few of the highlighted, or what I would consider the significant proposals here. And I'll start with a few years back, there was the SEU, right, so the Custodial Maintenance Union, and that really did two separate groups of classified staff. And so when we say classified, really we're talking about anybody that's not licensed under KSTP. Typically you would think of the folks that are working hourly rates versus like the teacher's salary. So there really were two different handbooks, two different worlds that they lived in. When SEU went away, ever since then we've kind of been evolving back to one classified group. And in most cases, I'm happy to say it's been, bringing up some of the benefits that maybe weren't in place for the folks that weren't in SEU. Sometimes it's been good for the SEU also, that whole group. But so most of the proposals in this book here would mean if everything goes through as is, we really would be back to one unified handbook set of rules for all classified staff, which I think is a pretty good goal. And like I said, if everything goes through as it's proposed right now, then that really would accomplish that. Some of the things that I wanted to point out that would be pretty big changes that we'll want to consider and talk through. On page 5, there was a longevity clause in the SEU and the custodial union. The proposal right now would be some minor adjustments to what the percents were, but to actually bring that in and include all classified staff there. Of course, there's a cost associated with that, but I feel like this is probably the year we can do it. We've got some of those federal funds sitting out there. So there would be a cost associated with that, but it's not as much as you would think. About $19,000 would be the hit up to like general fund, general or supplemental general. There is more to that, but then some of that is through the special income op, so that's really a separate fund, and then some of it could be Head Start funds also. So for about 20, you could bring everybody under that longevity, that same longevity clause. Questions or comments on there? And I'm not asking for any decisions tonight. I want you to look at it and ask questions, and then we can make finalize next month.
I guess the only comment I have is I'm glad we're giving every employee a longevity, every classified employee a longevity plan, so that's good, or a bonus, I should say.
I think it reinforces what we want, which is
people to stay longer.
So we'll be working there. Page 10, there's a proposal on page 10 that would provide holiday pay, so some paid holidays.
Okay.
One of the reasons that we're really, we can look at this now, and we've already talked a little bit about the 12-month staff and 7 holidays. So really the bigger change of the thing that we haven't talked about, and so we're kind of waiting to see where we'd be at money-wise too, is looking at anybody less than a 12-month staff and giving them 3 paid holidays. And those would be over that Christmas break. A couple of different reasons that we looked at. One, prior to this year, we annualized classified post pay. And we talked about that process. Now, by going to straight working off the time card, there's months where you work more than what your average would have been, and so you get paid more. But at Christmas time, especially with that long break in there, there's not very many work days in that pay period. So the days would be about 9 work days. That puts people in pickle, even though they've been months ahead of that, they've got paid more. It really does, when you go to doing that, it does make that much very short, and given 3 paid holidays, so we give Christmas Eve, and New Year's Day as 3 paid holidays, so it increases the number of paydays in there. But again, also kind of longevity, a reward for classified staff. 9, 10 or 11 months, really, which is worth it. Anybody less than a 12-month full-time staff would be 3 paid holidays. So 12-month full-time staff would be 7.
Is that tied to longevity, did you say?
No, it wouldn't be tied to longevity, but it's another way of, I think, rewarding classified staff and continuing to try and be competitive, not only with our wage and benefits, but also some other areas too.
What's the cost of that?
The cost of that one is, it was around another, was 3 days to the district was about another $30,000. Again, more than that if you factor in the Head Start and the special ed co-op, about $30,000 to the district. That's for those 3 that we've already talked about, the 7 days for the classified, or for the 12-month folks, and that was for the district. That was about 50 there, and that was that's already built into next year's budget. Okay. One of the things you look at page 11, there's been some changes in requirements for like extensions and things like that. Not really changes, but as we've been doing more projects, probably the better way to say it. As we've been doing more projects and some of these, even the light remodel jobs, it makes a difference if we have things like a master electrician or journeyman plumber. When we have those things, then we don't have to contract out as often. And so, in in an attempt to recognize those and then also be able to set parameters for some certain job descriptions and to be competitive in those areas too, looking at some different bumps for certifications. Now, it wouldn't mean if I went and got my HVAC journeyman, you're not going to give me a bump. You as a board would decide, okay, we need one master electrician because we want to be able to design and do our own jobs. We need one, master plumbers, whatever. So we set those out, but then we'd also have a bump to go with those. The ones that are proposed right now are maintenance, but we're also been talking to Scott about different, like network certifications and things like that, what that might look like also. So that'd be something to consider there. Not much money goes into that, but it does help us be competitive if we are trying to hire someone that has those certifications. Not the market. So that would be another one to look at. Processes, processes around like overtime and callback. Custodians, and this typically is going to be custodian, but in the SEU handbook there was procedures for calculating overtime and for what happens if we do callbacks. So you have an incident in a building and you need to call somebody back in. Well, it was in the SEU handbook, in our current classified handbook. It's a whole separate section, only applicable to custodian. Whereas if we have a bus breakdown in the liberal, and we have to call in another bus driver to send them down to get the kids, you're probably going to want to follow the same procedure. You want to pay them for that time and a half. If we had something went haywire and we had to call back in the payroll department to make sure payroll got run before Christmas, you would do the same thing. So really this one is I don't anticipate it gets used a lot, but again, it brings everybody under one handbook, and I think it's the right thing when you're looking at those folks and the roles that they have. Those are really, sure didn't miss any. Those are really the major differences I want you to pay attention to and kind of chew on. Feel free to ask questions. We can discuss them and look at them even more in depth next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I need to look at that some more. If it was easy, we would have voted on it tonight, but let's not do that.
No, I want you to do that.
We need a couple of weeks to think about those. Yeah. But I think I like the ideas that you have.
Yeah.
You making things more uniform. Oh, yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay. Okay, district technology network replacement. Now, this is something we've talked about before, but it looks like we have some more information from Scott.
Well, no, this will actually be kind of a new, what previously was our back end of our, he'll explain everything.
I've run into Scott a few times.
Yeah.
In the hallways talking about this.
Okay, there you go.
Well, good evening. So what this is, we've actually done quite a bit with technology this year. We had the tech audit that we did back in January. And one of the pieces identified there was the network, just that age of it. We are seeing the sunset on the equipment. We've had some of it sunset this year, but within the next year, just the support on the current equipment will sunset. It was put in back in 2014, right before we rolled out the one-to-one program. So when that tech audit came through this January, we were fortunate enough with timing. It was a little bit close, but we were able to get it in. Our current vendor right now is Extreme Networks. Was able to reach out to our sales, our account rep there, our engineer that's on staff there. They were able to walk me through a solution, replacement. We were able to apply for E-rate funding on it. And that's why this is coming to you now. We did just find out here that our funding was approved for a Category 2. And kind of the breakdown on this when we started, the actual MSRP on the equipment was about $1.1 million. As a school district, right out the gate, we get an incredible discount off the MSRP. And that's what you, I think, saw in that, the quote attached, that 400 and some thousand. From there, was able to cut down. There was a lot of next business day replacement in there, which, you know, the network, it's very important in what it does, but when I really sat down and looked at that cost, we were able to knock it back to $384,000 by eliminating most of that next day business support. There is still replacement support on it, so if an access point fails, a switch fails, we will still get it within a week. It just won't be the next day, but we could have a spare access point, spare switch on the shelf, and for the amount of money saved, to have a spare one on the shelf, we're still money ahead there. Knocked it down to that $384,000, applied for the E-rate funding. Discounting out, we do have a couple buildings that are ineligible. Our transportation site and our early childhood center are not eligible for E-rate funding. Everything else in the district either falls under it, or there's a way to, like Rockwell, since West Side's internet flows through this building, it qualifies. So there's ways to make that all happen. We were funded $247,293, which leaves the $136,896.68 that you see in front of you. I will tell you, 7 years ago, I think when the district did this, I think the initial cost was about $225,000, and then there was some additional past that. So all in on the current network, you're about $250,000. Moving forward, we're able to keep the same port density, so we're not backing down on the number of switches. And the only reason I did that was moving forward with camera systems coming in, VoIP phone systems. We're at about a 50% utilization on our switches right now, so I just wanted to have that buffer there as that new equipment comes in. Have that buffer there. We're adding in about 40 access points across the district. There are just some spots that are, we haven't had quite the coverage we need, or as building use has changed, we may have a spot that has a classroom of 4 or 5 kids this year, but all of a sudden next year, that classroom switches purpose and we've got a full 30 kids in there. So it's filling in some of those gaps. The Hayes High site, we will actually be putting in some outdoor access points and bridge, so we'll be able to cover internet over towards the football field and out towards the baseball complex, be able to catch the soccer fields in there as well. I know that's been a request out there, especially this year, live streaming has kind of grabbed more of a foothold, just to have that. And then that will also help us expand our footprint on security cameras out to that area as well, which is needed. So we're adding in all those access points. We're adding in management as well. The current system that we had when that was purchased, there was no management purchased with it at the time. We were able to get a trial license for 7 years. That expires this fall. But with it being a trial license, it was never fully configured. So there were bits and pieces that functioned for us, but for the most part, it didn't provide us any great insight into the network. Moving forward, it'll be a 5-year license included in this cost. And that's, stepping us up in the management of the network, security of the network, just the visibility and insights that we're going to have into it. I was pretty floored when I saw what they were doing with it and what we'll be able to tell. If a teacher does call in and say, internet's down in my room. Well, sometimes that's not the whole room. That may be a few devices, but in the rush of teaching class, you don't have time to diagnose all of that. So we can actually dial in on a device. It will compare it to other devices within that area of the building and actually tell us, yep, we've got a whole classroom that's having problems, or we've got a few devices having problems. Even to the standpoint, this is all cloud hosted. I think out of one of Amazon's data centers, if I remember right. So even if the teacher comes to us at the end of the day and says, boy, I had a tough time with internet second hour today, those points are all recorded, so we can go back in time and actually see what was going on second hour of that day. So it does, like I said, provide us quite the insight into it. Security, it does change how we're handling logins to the network. Right now, it's a shared passphrase across all the buildings, and, I mean, they're no secret. Staff know them, kids know them. So we spend a lot of time just kicking extra devices off the network that are just sucking down bandwidth. Moving forward, it does go to tie back to Active Directory, so when the kids sign in, we'll actually be able to tie back and say, yep, Scott was on that iPad, he did that, went to that site, because there will be some firewall technology built into it as well, so we can, as guests come in, we can make sure that those guest networks are fully firewalled off from our network, so all they see is internet. They don't have access back to any of our servers or anything internal. So, I mean, I think I could go on and list all the things that I'm just excited about with it. But I will tell you this: I do look forward in what's going to happen with the network. As Chris kind of alluded to, I've talked to our systems administrator. He is fully on board with the idea of getting certified. I will as well, just because I feel like if we're going to spend the money and do this, to have at least 2 of us on staff that know how the equipment functions, I think it's money well spent. They've got some even free versions to get us up to speed since we're education. The other piece that I wanted to hit on, they have what they call VIM modules in them, and that's really our communication between the head end where all of our buildings aggregate and back. Right now, with our current transport provider, Vive, we have 1 gig per second between buildings and our core network. We're contracted up to 10 gigs. Right now, the equipment that we have can't light the fiber to 10 gigs. So going forward, the VIM modules here are 1 gig up to 10 gigs. So we'd be able to take advantage of the 10 gigs right out the gate. Past that, we would be able to lag the connections together for up to 40 gig if we got to the point where we needed that. So it does provide expandability into the future for that reason. I know there's maybe some questions, so I'll pause and see if there's anything I can answer.
So the bid you have on here is a $384K basically, but we are actually only going to be spending about $137K.
Yep.
Because we get the other.
Yep, the rest of it's funded through E-rate.
The E-rate, okay, just want to make sure.
And that E-rate, it's in a 5-year cycle. We're in our first year of the 5-year cycle, so funding left over from that will get us through the next 4 years, but it's all Category 2 funds. So if we're doing the network this year, there's some other things we can look at down the road, firewall, things like that, but it's not going to put us in a pickle for spending down the road.
Well, plus we're getting more for our money, I think, than maybe last time with the 40 extra.
Yeah. Like I said, we're maintaining the same port density, but adding in those access points in the management.
Time does change. All right.
I think just some things I'd like to highlight, and Scott mentioned this, the tech audit, identified several things in our technology, and I think it's important to remember, we spend a tremendous amount of dollars on devices that we put in students' hands and staff's hands, but if we don't have a reliable network, those are useless, and that was one of the big identifiers in our tech audit, is that our network is old and at the end of its life. And just to highlight what Scott said is, and I wrote this down, we're going to get improved management, improved security, and improved coverage, and then you purchased, not that you personally as a board, but the board purchased 7 years ago, but it's going to be for $100,000 less than you spent 7 years ago. So this is really a pretty good deal. So,
I imagine back then that was a good deal too.
It was, yeah.
Technology changes and we move forward, so, okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Scott, is there a timeline that we have to meet to qualify for the E-rate?
So that was part of it. We actually applied for some of this funding out of a year ago's E-rate. That was, I threw everything at the wall I could find that year because we were extended out a 6th year, so the funding was going away regardless. So some of this equipment could actually be bought out of a previous year's money. The hurdle I run into with that is the way E-rate works, you have to have it installed by about September of the next year. So that means we'd have to have the equipment here and installed by September of this year. The unfortunate side of that, most of this equipment is anywhere between a month to almost 6 months of back order right now. So we can file for an extension, but I don't know when to file for an extension to, and as I told Ron, for 8 switches, it's a lot of hoops to jump through when it's covered out of this year's funding. So we would technically have until September of next year to get it all in and installed. And, even if there were some weird extenuating circumstances that pushed us to that, there is the option of filing for an extension, and E-rate's idea on that. The access points, when I say a month to 6 months back ordered, that's in the switches. The access points are, I think, pretty well in stock.
Okay.
So, I would know more, once, if this was approved and we get to purchasing. I talked with our account rep this afternoon, and he said, that timeline he's given me is very worst case right now. But, once we get the order in, he can see what strings can be pulled to maybe move that equipment up in the production.
Scott, I know you probably knew I was going to ask this. With the bid proposal, that this company is in Manhattan?
Yes.
Is there a local provider?
There was.
Okay.
CK Technologies is our local one. I've worked with him. It was unfortunate in the bidding. They weren't the low bid, and it didn't fall within that percentage to do that. The bids came anywhere from the 400,000 on the low end all the way up to, I think, about 890,000 on the high end. And so what I did was, since the local vendor couldn't do it, when I scored it out, E-rate, there's a matrix in there for scoring. So one of the matrix I scored on was local, and then spreading out from there, so Manhattan being the second closest.
I appreciate that, but I just never want to overlook our local vendors if we can go that direction.
Yep. Nope, if I can, I try to use them.
How many vendors did you send it to?
So E-rate's posted nationally. I got phone calls from probably at least a dozen, but 6 of them ended up bidding.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, one of them was kicked out. I mean, it was disqualified out the gate just for bidding guidelines, but like I said, the rest were just pricing, and pretty well the top 2 to 3 were, I'd say, within a 30,000-40,000 of each other, but unfortunately the local vendor just wasn't quite there.
Scott was,
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I just had a couple questions on,
Yeah.
I see we're going with Wi-Fi 6, which is great. Number one, is any of the stuff that we've ordered support any of the Wi-Fi 6?
Not yet. There again, I talked to him about it, and
Sure.
we had totally the option of going back down, but
No.
I just wanted to make sure we get it in for something that was going to last.
Right.
They're also the tri-band.
Right.
And with that, I know, we could run a 2.4 and then 2.5 gigahertz networks. We're probably going to try to shut down our 2.4 as much as possible and go to that 5, and then use that third radio in their security side of the house just to do the monitoring and all that.
Right.
But if we do get into a point, which I know some of like the gymnasiums, right now, the access points in there are only capable of supporting about 50 clients before they start slowing down. So I think these are going to push into about the 200 client range.
And that's what I was going to ask, because I see you have the 410s and the 510s. The 510s obviously have the 2.5 gig ports.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we only did 9 of those and the other ones we did the more?
Just they're for the gymnasiums, just the larger the venues where we'd have, I guess, more people. They actually told
It
me
looks like we had 18 switches. 18, what are those? How many port switches are those?
the 5520s.
5520s?
Yeah. So the 5520s, or I guess you're asking why there's just that number of those?
Yeah, I just saw we had, like I said, we had 18 switches, but we only had 9 of the access points that supported it. Are we looking to go that route or go down the line just so you have the ability to
Just
add those in?
the ability's there. Really, I was looking for it at a standpoint of how to provide Wi-Fi coverage in those larger venue seatings, something that would support through. And really, the 5520s, that number of switches was more for the aggregation. Those are going to be top of rack switches.
Gotcha.
So,
Are those the ones you're going to use to tie?
yeah.
Gotcha.
And then they are, because I know you like the tech information, they are the universal switches. So we will have that option of running exhaust, which we currently do,
Cool.
or switching over to fabric down the road if we, once we want to dip our toe in the water on that.
So if you, your timeline, I know we have to have the things installed by next September to get the E
Yeah.
ready, but if we vote on this next month, is that going to be good enough for you?
Yeah.
To get moving?
Yeah, like I said, at this point, there would be no rush to get it here. I mean, even if we got the order in and access points got here, we could start hanging those, but
Okay.
really the access points, since those are cloud configured, we can do that at any point, and, an afternoon after school, we can stop by a building and swap out some APs, so those aren't dependent on the switch going in. And then that'll give Brian and myself a little more time on the switch configs. Our engineer from St. Louis, he actually said, I don't know whether he'd actually come back out, but he's been out here twice in the last year, which I thought was really nice, just for a vendor to stop by, and especially with COVID and everything, but to make the trip out here from St. Louis just to see how we're doing and what they can help with. But
And I assume you guys will be able to get those built out, the buildings built out ahead of time with it being the cloud-based store. Like you said, you can just swap them in and away you go.
Yeah, it's actually scan the box with an app on your
Nice.
phone, and it's configured by the time you hang it on the ceiling.
Right.
But the engineer would come out and help us through some of that bigger config. And I think when we do that, it's not just going to be a slap it in, replace what's there. We're actually looking at changing IP schemas, everything,
Good.
and really kind of taking it as an opportunity to refresh from the ground up and make sure we're doing everything right from a security standpoint and routing.
Will this give us the option, I know you mentioned on some of us start implementing rate limiting and some of the other stuff now at the levels there to where we can go through and
Yep.
lock some of that down a little bit
Yep.
more? Good.
Yep.
You done with your
Thank you.
techie stuff?
I knew you had some good questions.
I love this, yeah.
Get back to English.
I think any more questions, folks? Okay, thank you for
right.
all the hard work you've done on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next item is our executive session. The board does need to go into executive session tonight, and then we do not have any other business afterwards, so I'll just close the meeting when we're finished with our executive session. I move to enter into executive session pursuant to the Kansas Open Meetings Act for matters relating to employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representatives of the body or agency, in order to protect the district's right to the confidentiality of its negotiating position and the public interest. Those invited to attend our executive session are the Superintendent Wilson, Superintendent Dinkle, Assistant Superintendent Dinkle, Assistant Superintendent Hip, Director of Special Education Carlin, and Board Attorney Jeter. Anybody else? Okay. After a 7-minute break, we'll meet back here at 8 o'clock.
And I'd say
And then
20 minutes.
20 minutes, right.
Yep.
And the executive session will end at 8:20. And I will close the meeting. Oh, that's right, that's a motion, isn't it? Long motion. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Before we adjourn, I would just like to thank the people that came to tonight's meeting. We have some new faces in the audience, and I know at least a couple of them are looking at board positions through the next election. So it was nice to see new faces out in the audience, and the older faces that we always have.
He said older, not old.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Lance made the motion.
No, you did.
I made the motion, Lance.
I second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, the motion passes 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way.